Yeah. Okay, I think we'll get started, councillors. Welcome along in what is another trying week in WA. I hope you all haven't gone house crazy with current lockdown. We are all councillor in attendance at the moment, with the exception of Councillor Henderson and Councillor Podolnik. Councillor McNamara, apology. If you can't see them, the officers in attendance are obviously the CEO, Mr. Bishop is online, Jim Coden, Kim Lay and Leon Vanderlyn. Also Amanda Albright, which you'll see sitting to my right. Adnana is also online, as is Phil Russell and Valerie Hodgson, who's our legal specialist. She'll be sitting in for Megan in coming weeks. Megan is just over in the corner taking notes, and Greta, our media girl, is there also. So we'll pretty much run through tonight, councillors, the same process as we normally. So we'll deal with the items that have got deputations for them first and take questions and so on, and we'll move through the remainder. As you're aware, because of the lockdown, we're here doing this meeting electronically and there is no public attendance. The meeting is unable to be live streamed, but we will be recording both audio and visual, and they'll be made available on our website. So during the meeting, if I can ask that first of all, you keep your cameras on, you keep your microphone on mute unless speaking, and when you do wish to speak, you'll see the raise your hand icon on your screen. So if you can just push that icon when you wish to speak or ask a question, Megan will then keep an eye on the order for me, and then you'll be invited to speak, unmute yourself, and then we'll go through from there. And then when you finish, if you could then mute yourself again. So I've pretty much done all that. So once we've run through the items of deputations, we'll go to the balance, and we'll call for questions on everything else and items to be withdrawn. So first of all, declarations of financial interest, proximity interest and interest affecting impartiality. At this point, I have not been notified of any. Ms. Albright, Mr. CEO.
Mr. Carly has his hand up.
Can you hear me there okay?
Yeah, if you could just mute Andrew, are you going to declare a financial interest or an interest of some kind?
I am. I'll just highlight 4.2 and 5.2 if I could, and get the paperwork in at a later time.
Okay, and what sort of interest would they be?
I believe the Guilford Association, as an executive of the Guilford Association, I may have contributed to comments in relation to, or submissions in relation to, these items.
No worries. Any other declarations, councillors or staff?
I received a declaration of interest from Councillor Richardson for item 5.2, a proximity interest.
Okay, Councillor Richardson, 5.2 proximity.
Councillor Johnson has his hand up.
Councillor Johnson, you got your hand up as well?
Yeah, I'd like to declare an impartiality for item 4.2, which is the childcare on Fauntleroy Street, Guilford, because I live nearby, but not so near as to give rise to a proximity interest. And I'll submit the paperwork later, if I may.
Thank you.
Councillor Richardson has also declared a financial interest in item 13.6, which relates to a development at 77 James Street. It's not actually on the agenda for consideration, but it's listed in other business. Councillor Zanino.
Councillor Zanino as well, you've got one?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, item C1.1, which is Councillor Johnson's financial report for the New Junction project, impartiality interest.
Okay. Any others, councillors?
Yeah, I've got one more, Mr. Mayor. So I'd also like to declare an impartiality interest in item 5.1, parking control signage, Water Street, Guilford, because I live nearby but not so near as to give rise to a proximity interest, and I'll submit the paperwork for the council meeting.
Any more? None? Okay, there are no public question time. Reports for which due notice, for which previous notice has been given, and deputations. So all the written deputations that were received by 5 p.m. Tuesday were circulated in the draft, and any additionals should have been circulated by close of today. So first up is you would have all received a deputation from Mr. Mark Richards from the Bellevue Residents and Ratepayers Association against the officer's recommendation. Councillors, any questions on this one? Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, thank you. I guess a question through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Coaten. Is it feasible and possible to build a culvert at the end of May Street over the sort of ditch or drain between the end of May Street and the railway reserve?
Mr. Coaten?
Yes, we are looking into that. Councillor Johnson did contact us earlier in the week about that as an option, and we are getting some information. There is a 750 mil water main that runs nearby, but it would be possible. It'll just be a matter of what the cost is. But yeah, we are looking into that and perhaps some more information before the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions, councillors, on 13.10? No? Okay, we now move on to part B, and 4.2 is demolition of existing house and construction of a childcare premises at lot 33 and 34, number 7, Fauntleroy Street, Guilford. Received 4 deputations, the first one being from Alison Pollich in support of the recommendation, which is against the proposal. Peter and Jude Smythe in support of the recommendation, again against the proposal. Gian DeRue from Meyer Shercorn Architects on behalf of the applicant against the recommendation in support, and Javier Heraso, the owner, against the recommendation in support. Again, councillors, any questions? Being none. Okay, we move on to 4.3, which is another childcare premises, including associated development, car park, rear access, landscaping and civil works at lot 56, number 62 North Avenue, and lot 57, 43 Bowman Street, Bullsbrook. And there was one from the owner, Mr. Jim Rowan, in support of the recommendation. Any councillors with a question?
No hands up.
No hands up. Okay. Carry on now to item 4.4, which is the proposed partial change of use, food and beverage production additions to existing winery and restaurant at lot 123, number 38, Swan Street, Henley Brook. There are 3 written deputations, firstly from Barry and Lily Thompson against the recommendation. Mr. Jack Versace in regards to conditions of approval. Martin Michael from Punk Cider, the owner, in support of the recommendation. Any questions, councillors? No hands up. Okay, we'll move on now to item 4.5, which is a horse arena solar tracker shipping container on lot 4, number 3780 West Swan Road, West Swan. And 1 deputation from Nanan Pavlinovich, the owner, in support of the recommendation. Any questions, councillors? No? Okay. We'll move on to 4.10, non-conforming use truck depot and unapproved sea containers 10, Dongers 2, and proposed crushing of rubble at lot 100, number 55 Barrett Street, Hern Hill. There's 2 deputations, one from Slobada Smith in support of the recommendation against the proposal, and one from Xanthe, Nicholas and Reece D'Angelo, the owners, against the recommendation in support. Questions, councillors? None? We move to 6.1, differential rating for 21-22. 1 deputation there from Ms. Cowan Mowat in regards to proposed ratings. Questions? None? Well, okay. Presentations by officers, which we have nil at this point in time. So that takes care of all of the items that had deputations. So we'll just run through the remainder of the list, councillors. 13.9 or 13.11. Any questions, councillors? Okay, 2.1, which is the corporate business plan. 2.2, which is a policy review of investment of surplus funds. None?
Councillor Callahan.
Councillor Callahan, you have a question?
Yes, thanks. The thing I want to ask is, under prohibited, this is 2.2, we're on 2.2?
That's correct, yeah.
I just want to ask please, of the presiding officer that we could just go a little bit slow, because this is all new and I don't want to miss out on having to come back to it. So if we could just go a bit slower. So we're on 2.2. I wanted to ask a question about the prohibited investments. Now, has council considered at any point divestment from fossil fuels, or that being a prohibited investment?
Yes, we have. Ms. Lay, would you like to give some more information on that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We do have within this policy, under section 2.8, a section which the city considers to invest in non-fossil fuel investments, and that's subject to meeting the controls around the credit framework, around how much you can have with different parties and the level of risk assigned to different investment institutions. But the intention is to then invest in non-fossil fuel investment opportunities.
Okay, so that's not been included in prohibited investments? No. Okay, and the other two areas are I'm interested in terms of prohibited investments are investments that involve deforestation of I suppose indigenous forests, and that can be anywhere in the world, and also any kind of unethical companies that are involved in any unethical practices, such as testing on animals and things like that. So just wondering if that had been considered as well.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, not specifically those two examples.
All right then, thank you.
Any further questions, councillors, on 2.2? No, okay, 2.3 is policy review related party disclosures. Any questions, councillors? Councillor Callahan.
Yes, thank you. I'm interested in on page 118. You've got under definitions C, and then it goes on C dependence, blah, blah, and then it's underlined. The above list is non-exhaustive and more distant family members, etc. Everyone following where I am?
Yep.
I just didn't see that. I mean, I'm sort of getting the key of the changes is that anything that's underlined ends up in the policy. But then when I actually looked in the policy, I couldn't actually see that bit about this above list is non-exhaustive. So has that gone in the policy or not?
Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Ms. Lay?
If I can answer. The underlined bit that you're referring to, Councillor Catalano, is included in the revised policy. If you go to section 2, you will see there's an A, B and C, and then that text is underneath that C.
I don't see it, sorry. It's not in my copy.
I will just,
Have I,
if
It's
you go,
124
yeah, 124.
and under 2C.
Okay, all right, yes, okay, that's under the definitions. Okay, it's not under 2C. It's okay, got it. Close members, thank you for that. That's fine. Thanks, that's all. I just wanted to clarify that. Thanks very much.
Okay, any other questions on 2.3? No, okay, we move to 2.4, which is a policy review of councillors' allowance, expenses and recognition. Any questions, councillors? No, okay, we'll move on to 2.5, policy live streaming and recording meetings. Any questions?
Yeah, just one question, if I may.
Councillor Johnson.
It says somewhere in the report that we're going to keep the recordings for just 1 year. Is that correct? I thought we'd be keeping them in perpetuity.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. That's the advice that I've received. I will take your question on notice and double check that under the Records Act.
Okay, thanks. But even if the Records Act says 1 year, could we not keep them for longer?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, certainly you could, but they will take up, I guess, space. So I don't think you'd want to necessarily keep them in perpetuity. I know that for physical records, we keep them for 7 years. So that perhaps would be an alternate option.
Okay, thank
Any
you.
further questions, councillors, on 2.5? No?
I have one. I've just raised my hand. Sorry, Mayor. In
Councillor
relation to keeping those records in perpetuity, as Councillor Johnson mentioned, could we get some idea of costs to achieve that end, given that data storage is coming down in cost, and it might serve a greater purpose in future to have those records on recorded for all time?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll take that on notice.
Okay. Anyone else in the hand up, Megan? Any further questions, councillors, on?
Sorry, I've got my hand up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, Helena.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to make that comment that the state records is kept for 7 years. So in terms of the keeping of that live streaming, I mean, it'd be in accord with the the state policy on keeping records. Thanks.
Any further, councillors, now? 2.6, which is the policy review of provision of public art. Any questions? Councillor Anderson? No? Okay, thank you, councillors. 3.1 is the Midland Sports Complex operating model. Any questions, councillors, on 3.1?
Councillor Catalano.
Yeah.
Councillor Catalano, I think you were first.
Thank you. Yes, I've got a couple of questions. This is so I'm just making sure that we're talking about the one that's in the supplementary. Is that correct? 3.1 in the supplementary?
That's correct.
Yes, thank you. I couldn't quite understand some of the figures on page 23. Now the total revenue, 137,536. I see that basically you've got there's the 21,000 and the 18,000 coming from the tennis club and bowling club. So where's the other 100,000 coming from for the total revenue?
Vandalin?
No, Mr. Bishop.
Mr. Bishop, is it? Oh, sorry, yeah, mine is out of order. Mr. Bishop.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to clarify, so you're reading from the financial implications or the actual?
3, and it says total revenue of 137,536. So I imagine, is that what you've received, as what we've received this year? I couldn't quite understand. Is that for this year? This financial year?
So, no, that's for, sorry, I'm just checking. So for financial year ending 30th of June 2020, total revenue 137,536, including 21,000 from tennis club, 18,000 from bowling and club licenses. Some of the rest of that, if not all of that, will be from the sale of alcohol. Just seeing if I can check the actual. I'll just quickly give you the exact figure. If I'll take it on notice and give you the exact figure for the but I'm pretty sure most of it, if not all of the remainder, will be from alcohol sales.
All right, thanks. And I just wanted to clarify that the figures over the page of the total expenses of 500,665 were for the year 1920?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, so that's last year. So, okay, so the loss last year was 363,129.
That's correct.
Right, thanks for that. Cheers, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Johnson, you're next.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I understand that we're recommending category 2, option D, which is bowling club applies for a full club liquor license all year round. Having met with the club on several occasions about this issue, they've always expressed to me that this is what they want, but they always wanted a license in addition to the existing bar license. And my question, I guess, is to Mr. Bishop. Does the bowling club know about this proposal, and are they supportive of it?
Mr. Bishop.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The bowling, excuse me, the bowling club were consulted by Clubs WA in regards to the development of all the categories and the options. They haven't seen this final report. The intent of this report to council is to seek endorsement to now consult with the bowling clubs and the tennis club with a full copy of the Clubs WA report that council's been briefed upon, and then to bring the matter back to council for a final decision once we've got further input from them.
All right, that sounds great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any other questions, councillors? Okay, we move on to 3.2, which is the Noongar Artwork Commission Council Chambers. Questions? Councillor Congleton, did your hand just go up?
It did, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yep.
I have a question. If I could ask a question of Councillor Kiley, please. Councillor, I recall originally this was supposed to be a piece of artwork that was going to be above the door at the back of the CEO in the chamber. Is that your recollection of that motion?
I haven't got it with me, obviously, at the moment, but I thought we'd changed it to leave it open for staff and the RAP committee to come up with an alternative or an ideal position for it. So I don't think it was specified exactly, although it was included in the original motion. I think it was taken out.
Yeah, I remember the change, Councillor, but I do recall it was sitting at the back above the door where the CEO sits, or just to the left of that.
That's what we were originally talking about.
Yeah, okay. And then now the new location is behind the councillors on the opposite side to where you sit, and taking out all of the original, or majority of the original old photos.
Well, if that's what the RAP committee is recommending, or staff are recommending, and I'm very happy that it's going ahead, and I congratulate the RAP committee on the work that they're doing on this. But I'm very pleased that it's being allocated a decent amount of money, and that it's going ahead, or will hopefully go ahead when this item gets voted on.
I wasn't questioning the amounts and the other bits and pieces. I was more in the original location. But you've answered my question. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Congleton. If you could just mute yours, Councillor. Okay. I might ask the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Lucas. Even though I chaired the RAP, I was pretty incapacitated at the meeting last week, suffering from a flu, and I was couch-bound. And the Deputy Mayor chaired the meeting and did a great job. Councillor, whether I was hearing things on the drugs I was on at the time, my understanding that the location within the chamber was still up for some discussion during the RAP. I don't recall an exact. There was plenty of discussions about curtains and all sorts of stuff. My thoughts were that the location was still open for discussion. Is that your recollection?
Yes, the staff came back and recommended a position on the, if you're sitting in your chair, it would be along the left-hand wall, and the majority of the portraits of former councillors would be removed. Initially, I thought that the artwork would be painted onto the wall, and then I thought, well, if there's ever fire or any damage to the building, if it was actually painted on the wall, then it would be damaged. So perhaps hanging art on a canvas may be better because it could be then removed, or a number of smaller pieces of art to make a larger piece. And we also spoke, because those curtains on the right-hand side where Councillor Johnson, Scanlon, Podovnik and those other councillors sit, where Councillor Zanino sits, whether we could put some artwork on the curtains, which are always drawn. But once again, that's up to discussion, and also be important to get the information back from the successful artist as to their vision of decorating the chamber. And we did discuss perhaps either relocating the camera, because that wall would not be seen on any live stream. It would only be seen by members in the gallery and by members on Councillor Zanino's side, because the other councillors had their back to it. So that's still open for discussion in conjunction with the artists once they've gone through that selection process. Thank you.
That's Lucas. Any further questions, councillors?
Councillor Henderson and then Councillor Johnson.
Councillor Henderson first, then Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, thank you. While we're on the subject of art and photographs on the walls, could I perhaps again raise the issue that fluorescent lamps in the council chamber is slowly destroying the photographs in the room, and it would be a really good idea if we could replace them with LEDs or something like that that are very low ultraviolet emitting. Frankly, we're losing a lot of our art in that area, and we need to, or art and history, we need to do something about it.
Taking the board, thank you. Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, my question relates to the placement of the art and the nature of the art. I see the recommendation is to place it on the left-hand side as the mayor is looking at the room. But did the people consulted give any consideration to, say, a diptych or a triptych on the right-hand side? That might be quite interesting. Did that come up in discussion? I guess question to Councillor Lucas.
Yeah, Councillor Lucas, not to my recollection, but
it did. But on the right-hand side, behind yourself, Councillor Johnson, on that side of the room, you've got at least two large windows with curtains or blinds on them. So whether you have three pieces, one either side of the windows present, but that's something I think can be further explored with the artists once they're been selected, as to whether it's going to be one big piece, whether it's going to be a number of smaller pieces, how they're going to link up, or hopefully, value for money, we might be able to get art on both sides of the walls.
Yeah. Good answer. Thank you.
Councillors.
Councillor Congleton.
Councillor Congleton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would be moving a deferral motion on this, so if you take note.
Any other councillors with questions? Okay. I now move on to 4.1, which is the responsible authority report for the proposed large format retail fast food outlets gym liquor store on lot 7385 the Promenade, Ellenbrook. Any questions, councillors? No, we move on to 4.6, which is the proposed extension of the reception centre, non-conforming use restaurant tavern, including incidental building works at the Mallard Duck at lot 17, number 10, John Street, Henley Brook. Questions, councillors? Councillor Catalano, your question.
Yes, thank you. Look, I found it very difficult to understand what's actually going on here from the description given and the diagrams. So can I just have a bit of clarification? Like, I can see the existing buildings, let's say page 362. I can see there's existing buildings there. And then there's this large area that's kind of going out into, I imagine, is currently, well, it seems to be a lake, but it can't be going, oh, that's, okay. Sorry, I'm having trouble just understanding what is where.
Mr. Russell? Mr. Russell?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I was just shooing away the cleaner. Very simply, there's 3 elements that are subject to this application. Okay, so if you go to what is page 362, you'll see them highlighted in grey. Okay, and they are the proposed keg room, a change to the existing pergola, where they're going to put a little bar in it, and the existing toilet utility building. Okay, those are the nature of the changes as outlined in the report. So it is a busy site plan that shows a lot of bits and pieces. Okay, but that is the scope of the items that are subject of the application. So they're very minor, internal within the site, minor works, but they are technically the nature of an expansion to what is a non-conforming use by virtue of the amendments that we undertook to our scheme.
Okay, and currently those buildings don't exist. Is that correct? I can't sort of tell if they exist or not. Do they currently don't exist?
The pergola exists. Okay, the keg room is new, and the existing toilet utility building exists. So it's the nature of the use of those. So they're not new structures. Those two. It's the conversion of them.
Ah, conversion. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, we'll move on now to 4.7, which is proposed shed at lot 7812, number 14, Packwood Link, The Vines. Any questions, councillors? No. Okay, we'll move on now to 4.8, which is the proposed ancillary building at lot 10, number 6, Amur Close, Beachborough. Questions, councillors? No. Okay, we move to 4.9, proposed alterations to non-conforming use, screen walls a lot 52, 53, 54, Great Northern Highway, Middle Swan. Questions? None. Okay. 4.11, statutory planning decisions under delegated authority. Questions? None. 5.1, parking control signage, Water Street, Guilford. Any questions? Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, my question is, I guess, to Mr. Coaten. When reading the report, I was surprised to find that there was no response from the Woodbridge Hotel, which whose patrons would be significantly impacted by this change. Am I correct in finding there was no submission?
Okay.
That is correct. I don't think they did put in a submission. I will double check that, but that's my understanding.
Yeah. My next, it's always difficult to prove a negative. Next question, also through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Coaten, is we are in effect stopping parking on both sides of the street, and it is a narrow street. And the question I've got is closer to the junction of East Street and Water Street, there's an area where the road has been widened, and that provides an area for parking. A question that's come up a few times when talking to residents, and I'm sure that the Woodbridge Hotel would support this as well. On the northern side of Water Street, would it be possible to continue that widening of the road so that we could have parking along one side of Water Street?
That's not something that we've looked into. I'd imagine that you'd get a few objections from the residents along there as well. You'd probably be looking at parking embayments would be better rather than just widening the road and opening it up. But, yeah, it's not something we have looked at. I can get staff to have a look at the practicalities of it, but I would suggest you'd get a lot of objections from the residents there.
And I guess the other question then is, if we do stop parking on both sides of the road, and I think in practice generally either one side or the other side is chosen for parking on, I'm suspecting that we're going to lose parking for, I believe it would be for about 10 to 15 patrons of the hotel, and they're going to then park somewhere else, and they're going to probably park in that I think it's the Chestnut area in the first road on the right as you drive down Water Street, and then that's going to impact the residents because they'll end up parking in their driveways, parking in front of their garages, which is a frequent complaint. How are we gonna manage this?
Okay.
Yes, that is correct. It is obviously if people aren't parking there, they will be parking somewhere else. So that will have to be assessed as it's if people are parking in front of garages and things like that, that'll need to be reported and investigated and enforcement action taken.
Yeah, okay. Oh, Mr. Mayor, I just need to notify you while we move in an alternate motion on this one, basically to defer it and investigate the possibility of putting in parking bays.
Thank you, councillor. Any other questions, councillors, on that one? No? Okay, the next one is 5.2, proposed replacement of street lighting, James and Meadow Street, Guilford. Questions? Right, okay. 6.2 is the adoption of the annual budget. Any questions, councillor? Councillor Catalano.
Oh, thank you. I'm just going to refer to the corporate business plan. Can I do that at this point?
Well, if it relates to the budget.
Well, is there any other point? Well, what I wanted to know was, I just do not understand where the municipal funds are. Where do I find that in this budget? The amount of municipal funds.
Ms. Lade?
If you could just tell me a page.
Through Mr. Mayor. Can I just clarify, is Councillor Catalano referring to the revenue that will be raised from rates?
Well, no, I can understand the revenue from rates, but if you could then, I mean, there's always this thing about municipal funds. You know, we hear discussions through the year about municipal funds and municipal funds being made available for certain things that come along through the year. So I'd like to know, where's this fund? Because I can see there's allocations for all kinds of things, but I don't know where this fund is or where does this fund exist in this budget for these things that have got to come up from time to time.
Ms. Lade?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Well, it's a combination. The municipal fund is the city's bank account. It's where all funds for municipal purposes are held. So it includes money that comes in from rates. When we roll over a year and we have raised loans, that goes in as municipal funding as well. If we receive grants in advance in 1 year, it comes in as municipal funding. So there's a combination of different elements that actually form the city's municipal funding.
All right, I understand that. So where do I find in this budget? Because obviously for that, you know, you're going to have a budget. This is what the budget is, isn't it? It's how that money is allocated for the next year. So where is the amount that is not allocated that has to be used for things that might crop up? Where do I find that budget? Things that haven't, an amount that hasn't been allocated. What is it called and where do I find it in the budget?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there's no amount that isn't allocated in the municipal funds when we set this budget. It's all fully allocated on that rate setting statement.
All right, so it, you know, like something comes up and we need to have, you know, $50,000 for a certain item that comes up in the year and it, you know, hasn't been identified already. Where do we find that 50,000? Where is it coming from this budget?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, each month, the city, we prepare a report called the Budget Adjustment Report, and that's where we're showing to council where money's been taken from and reallocated to, and we put that to council to approve those adjustments. And then when we get council's approval, we go and reallocate the budgets.
Okay, I understand. So basically you'd take it from another area and you'd put it into that thing that's cropped up. Okay, that's good. Okay, And I just wondered also about the debt management and the borrowings. That's on page 22. It's got here new junction development, $12 million in 22, 23, 26 and 27. Can we put that in at this stage, given that the sunset clause hasn't been determined?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if I can just please clarify what page you're referring to, please.
Page 22 of the, what's it called? It's called the corporate business plan.
Mr. Mayor, if it's in the corporate business plan, if I can just please refer to Ms. Albrecht.
Sorry.
Page 22.
Sorry,
it's called, oh, hang on, maybe I've got, sorry, no, oh, sorry, I sent you to the wrong place. It's called the long-term financial plan, sorry. Page 22, long-term financial plan, sorry. So did you see what I mean? Do you see the point I'm raising?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry,
in order to get a 10-year horizon, which is the long-term financial plan, we have kept those draft future years in the long-term financial plan. We have not included anything for 21-22, which is the current budget for council adoption, until that review has been undertaken on the new junction project. But for the purpose of just assessing where that, especially the debt service ratio, could end up, we felt a more conservative approach would be to keep those borrowings in to get a good view of future years.
All right, thanks. And I've just got one final clarification, and again, it's probably because I just don't understand the budget, but it'd be great to have it cleared up. So we're going back to the annual budget and page 17 and 18. Now, geez, I'm sorry, it's not 17 and 18. It's maybe it's this one. Sorry. Oh, sorry, it's page 55 and 56 of the annual budget. And we've got two sets of figures on each page, but I just do not understand. 30th of June, 1st of July. On the third, we've got 17 on the left-hand page, unrestricted cash, 39 million. And yet, if you go over here, 30th of June, unrestricted cash, 16 million. And I was just wondering, why have we got that big difference?
Right.
Didn't understand that.
Just one moment. One is on the left-hand side, 17A is the opening balance, and 17B is the projected closing balance. So it's from 1 July, and then what will it look like on 30 June?
Thank you. Thanks very much. That's all I wanted to ask. Thank you for that.
Councillor Johnston, you've got your hand up as well.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I've got a couple of questions. The first question is on page 18 of the rate setting statement. It's a question about capital works, and the purpose of my question is I do believe councillors need to be able to explain this if they're asked questions, and there's one part in here where I think a question would get asked. So the second item under capital works on page 18 of the rate setting statement says developer contributions infrastructure, and that is negative. And I have been advised by the CEO that's because it is we are spending money on infrastructure as a result of developer contributions. And I guess, first of all, can I have a confirmation that my understanding is correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. That is correct. It relates to developer contributions. It's the in-kind elements.
All right. Okay, now I'm getting confused because I thought it was things that we're building as a result of developer contributions, therefore we're spending money.
It is an expense item. It's part of the $181 million capital program. It's under the section called in-kind assets contributed by developers.
Okay. Okay. Can you tell me what page that's on?
24.
24. In-kind assets contributed by developers. So I've got 24,690.
And that will
2680. Yeah.
No, the total of that is 27.5.
Yeah.
And that's a combination of that line item, developer contributions infrastructure, and land ceded to the Crown, which is the bottom line of that section.
All right. I think we're narrowing in on this. I guess the question then is, in terms of traceability of this, I think there ought to be traceability. So I should be able to see clearly developer contributions infrastructure, where we're building infrastructure or it's being delivered in kind. Surely the numbers should match. Is there any reason why they don't? I mean, how do I get those numbers to match?
They do. If you
So where do I get?
Okay, if you go to page 24.
Yep.
And about halfway down, there's a bold heading that says in-kind assets contributed by developers.
Yeah, I got that.
There's a subtotal there of 24.69.
Yep.
Bit further down, there's a subtotal of 2.8.
Yeah.
Those two together, if you go back to your statement on page 18, are developer contributions infrastructure, that line of 26.8.
Mm-hmm.
And land ceded to the Crown.
Oh, I see. So if I add those two together, I should get $27,546,480.
Yes.
All right. Okay. All right. And is it right in saying that the structure of the rate setting statement is set by statute? So is this something that required either under some accounting rule or under the local government act?
It's local government financial management regulations which prescribe how the statements must appear in the budget.
Okay. So are we able to modify then our capital work schedule so that it presents in a way that's easily traceable to the rate setting statement? Or does that make it incompatible with, say, the cash flow statement or something else?
It just, because the capital works schedule is presented by capital programs, it doesn't relate in such a way to the rate setting statement, but the subtotals do.
All right.
It's a different application.
All right. And the other question I've got is, would it be possible for a future budget to come up with an index or an explanation of the arithmetic that goes into this, so councillors can quickly check that the capital work schedule matches the rate setting statement and so forth? Is that a feasible thing to do? I think you give all these things numbers and then show and all the capital work schedule, major items, letters and something, and just explain how they add up. Is that something that can be done?
We have given a very simple arithmetic version to the rate setting statement in response to one of your questions, Councillor Johnson. But what you're asking is, it's actually the work of nearly 20 people who build these schedules and do these reconciliations to actually build these statements that then get verified and clarified by the OAG and sign off that they're actually correct.
Yeah, but I guess what's at issue is that we have to explain it. So councillors need to be able to explain it. So one of the interesting features about the annual budget is our photographs are at the front. So therefore, if our photographs are at the front, it implies that we're endorsing it and we understand it, and therefore we'll be able to explain it to ratepayer. So that's the reason I asked that. Anyway, no, I'm satisfied. It's good. So the only other question I've got, is I think has been partially answered already. If we're not going to go ahead with spending $6 million of capital on the Midland Oval Redevelopment Master Plan or New Junction, why doesn't that reduce the rates?
through you, Mr. Mayor, because that was fully loan funded.
Okay, that makes sense. All right, thank you. That's all my questions.
Councillor Kelani, you got another question?
I have, yes, sorry. It's on page 78, and it's just the schedule of fees and charges. I was just quite interested to see that the Powerhouse and the Midland Square are on there. Sorry, I wasn't aware. Have we been charging for those spaces for some time, or have they just recently come up, or and I thought, I mean, when does that whole area, are we in control of that area, or is it still the MRA? Or I just wanted an update on, you know, where we're at with that precinct.
Through
you, Mr. Mayor, may have to refer this one perhaps to Mr. Bishop.
Mr. Bishop?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So can I just check the page number, the councillor?
Page 78 of
Yes.
Budget.
Yep. And I think you mentioned the Powerhouse and something else.
And Midland Square, there's Midland Squares there.
Yep.
And just curious because, you know, that's still like under the state government control as far as I was aware. But have we been leasing those out has the city been doing all of that, has it?
So the city has been trying to reactivate that area behind the council chambers, behind the old courthouse and Carnegie Triangle. Obviously, there's been issues with antisocial behaviour, but there's also been underutilisation of that space, particularly.
Sorry, can I just, before you go on, it's actually MRA, I believe, isn't that, or is the Powerhouse the MRA over on the other side of the railway line?
No, we have control of that asset now.
Oh, you do have, and Midland Square is that over on the other side, or is that on the Carnegie Triangle side? I thought Midland Square was over on the other side of the railway line as well. That's what I was referring to. That's what I was asking. Have we got? Are we looking after those spaces now, and are we maintaining them and hiring them out, or not? I wasn't aware that.
Yeah, I think that's the outdoor area of the old MRA site. So that's the outdoor area, not the buildings. That's the events.
The Powerhouse is a building, isn't it?
Yes. Yep. So.
Is this a new thing? I'm trying to ask.
Yes,
is this a new thing? Is this
a new thing?
I wasn't aware of this, and I mean, are we also going to be managing the maintenance of those places and the if we're going to take hiring fees, are we managing them? I wasn't aware that we were actually managing those spaces.
Yeah, look, Mr. Mayor, I'll take that on notice and look into that in a bit more detail, because I think I better cross-check that, because that is from. It looks to me that's a new fee. But the council is asking questions about control and costs associated with that. So I think it's best if I take it on notice. And
wasn't aware you were having control of that as yet, and I thought there might have been some actually discussion about us not taking control of it actually previously.
Councillor Johnson, you're next.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, my question is just a clarification of what page we've just been looking at. So I'm looking at page 78 of the annual budget, and my copy doesn't have that information. Actually, I think maybe Midland Redevelopment Authority Powerhouse. Is that what we're talking about? Okay.
That's what we're talking.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Got it.
Mr. Bishop, can you get back on that? Yeah. Okay. Councillor, any further question on the budget? Councillor Kylie.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'm interested in understanding, given I've asked for some discussions around the hire of halls and the like in the various suburbs, how would a change to that fee structure affect our approval of this budget? When could we do that? Or do we have to wait another 12 months before we look at doing that? Just interested in some advice there.
Ms. Lay?
Budget adjustment.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm not across what Councillor Kiley is referring to.
If I could just explain then, we're looking at the possibility, what are the implications of removing some of the higher fees for community use of public halls and facilities, which obviously will have a budgetary impact. So I'm just interested to know, do we have to wait another 12 months to make changes, or can we make them during the year in the coming months?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we would have to assess the size and scale of that proposal and then put something forward to councils via budget adjustment.
Thank you. And if Mr. CEO, if you wanted to add something at all?
CEO?
Or just through you, Mr. Mayor, or council could resolve through resolution during the year as well, if you wanted to waive the fees on a particular venue or hall, or we could deal with it through delegation as well. I've got limited delegation to waive the fees for a certain amount as well.
Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, question about the same thing. We also have an issue with insurance being required of associations, which many of them can't afford. Have we resolved that issue at this stage?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we're very close to sending out a memo for councillors with the good news that we have reviewed our insurance policy and it will be broadened to more than the one community group per suburb.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Good news.
Any further, councillors?
Councillor Henderson.
Councillor Henderson.
Thank you. Just in regard to community groups and hall hire, my understanding is that groups have already got one use per month free for their meetings. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, so I'm wondering where Councillor Johnson's going with this.
Oh, it was actually Councillor Kiley, I think. He's requested a chat with the CEO in regards to some of those charges for small community groups.
Effectively,
if I could just explain, Councillor Henderson, it came about as a result of some discussions a week or so ago. It's more about community groups that are looking to set up, and they're looking to have those initial meetings to maybe get a group of people crocheting or board game players and the like setting up. It's not, you're talking about established community groups. This is about small groups who are maybe looking to get together and see if there's any possibility of creating a long-term group. So that's what it was about.
Any further, councillors?
Councillor
Catalano again.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Yes, thanks. With the community groups and the use of the hall for one meeting. Well, actually, to be honest with you, I wasn't even aware of that. But anyway, what kind of groups are we talking about? Is there some special type of group? Does they have to have a special kind of quality about them? They have to be incorporated? Do they have to have charitable status? Do they have to have so many members? Can I please have some information about these groups that and the policy around?
CEO.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to send that out tomorrow, Councillor Catalano, in relation to the groups that are eligible. And my understanding as well is that the library also has spaces that are free for use of all community groups at all times as well. But I'll confirm that in email tomorrow and send it out again.
Fantastic, thank you.
Okay. No others? So we now move to 6.3, list of accounts paid. No. 6.4, financial management report period end of May 2021. None. 6.5, change of basis evaluation. Nope. 7.1, appointment of independent audit committee member. Since we don't do this motion. Now we go to confidential items. Councillor, there are two confidential items. I assume you're all in a secure confidential space.
recording now.
Yeah.
Still, so
It's
we
recording seconds. Stop the
just
recording.
take 30 seconds to.
We just got to wait for a delay. Councillor's a bit of delay in recording.
Just want to check
No,
that.
she's taking.
Say that I do want to ask something out of the confidential. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, okay. Right, so we
Stop the recording.
is it stopped, Meadow? Do you know?
Let's just
Yeah,
do it
leave it.
now.
Just in that top corner once it